That's right, it's KP's Video News. And I'm coming to you with the real, I'm coming to you with the raw. And this story I'm about to read right now is something that I never thought about. And it says, with black people, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and the risk of death from coronavirus. Here's some facts. Black people have been found to be more likely to die from COVID-19 infection than white people, both in the United Kingdom and the United States of America. Black people have the higher rate of PTSD diagnosis than white people. PTSD can result in suppression of the immune system. Immunosuppression is associated with a higher risk of death from COVID-19. It is thus unreasonable to question whether PTSD-induced immunosuppression is contributing to the elevated risk of dying from COVID-19 among black people. Data reveals that black people are more than 4 times likely to die from COVID-19 than white people in England and Wales, and that even after adjusting for age, socioeconomic conditions, and prior health, the figures show that black people remain twice as likely to die from COVID-19 than white people, and according to the Office of National Statistics. Some suggest sickle cell is the explanation. However, this is unlikely. Being already in a shielded group, they are likely to have little or no ongoing exposure to COVID-19. Other contributory factors have been highlighted are obesity, overcrowding, and frontline working. However, these are likely to be already adjusted for within socioeconomic status. This article proposes that PTSD-induced immunosuppression contributes to a raised mortality for COVID-19. PTSD is a condition which occurs after a traumatic experience where symptoms persist of relieving the distressing event, and there's a hypervigilance, numbing, mood changes, and negativity about the self, the world, and the future. There is avoidance of people and situations that act as reminders of event and sleep and concentration disturbances. Physical symptoms include neurological, respiratory, and cardiovascular symptoms that also occur in PTSD. And what is the evidence that black people have higher PTSD rates of high? And said the adult psychiatric morbidity survey, and that was done back in 2014, found doubling the rate of PTSD among black adults at 8.3 compared to white adults at 4.2, though assumed the differences could not be relied on because of the small sizes involved. One study found when PTSD affects U.S. race, economic, and ethnic minorities, it is usually untreated and likely to become chronic and persistent, and suggested that the large disparities in treatment indicate a need for investment in accessible and culturally sensitive treatment options. A separate 2-year follow-up in the study found that African Americans with PTSD experience high number of traumas, and most do not receive treatment. Findings from large-scale national studies suggest African Americans have a 9% prevalence rate of PTSD. This suggests that almost 1 in 10 black people becomes traumatized. This is an underestimate due to the known underdiagnosis of PTSD in black people. Studies of racial discrimination and race-related stress have shown that when an individual reports psychological distress from racism, trauma was often not considered. In addition to traumatic experiences that a person of any race or ethnicity might face, race-specific traumas include microaggressions and the erosion of the fundamental requirement for human beings, a sense of belonging. A striking example of that undermining of belonging was witnessed by the generation in the UK. Black people face challenges to a sense of belonging to desirable social, housing, occupational groups, and on a wider scale, there are challenges to the black person's right to belong in a country such as the UK and the United States. A crude example being "go back to where you came from" statement. A sense of belonging is an intrinsic human need. Psychologist Maslow's hierarchy of human needs defines self-actualization and self-esteem as requiring the secure foundations created by a sense of belonging. Another often overlooked contributory factor to the large prevalence of traumas affecting black people is the intergenerational transmission of trauma. Parent-child attachment patterns are known to replicate through generations within families. Going back to slavery and post-slavery eras, forced black family disruption was part of the mechanism that enabled forced labor and enrichment of slave owners and others, and this involved brutal disregard for the integrity of the black family by the white oppressors. Yet another overlooked factor is vicarious trauma, and witnessing shootings of unarmed black people can give rise to the sense of threat to the black viewer's sense of his own safety. A study of 1,500 male workers with a previous history of PTSD concluded that PTSD produces immunosuppression and has long-term implications for health. This finding is now widely accepted amongst mental health professionals, and a questionnaire commonly used as a tool to diagnose PTSD. A cutoff point of 37 and above is commonly accepted by mental health workers as associated with immunosuppression. Treatment of PTSD. PTSD in black people is treatable with the growing number of psychotherapies, including prolonged exposure therapy, cognitive processing therapy, somatic experience, and delivered by psychotherapists with training and knowledge in diversity matters. Medication is sometimes but not always required. Conclusion. There now exists evidence for higher death rates of black people from COVID-19 compared to white people, as well as the evidence that black people have higher rates of PTSD diagnosis than white people, and furthermore that PTSD is associated with the immunosuppression, and we know that immunosuppression is associated with the higher risk of death from COVID-19. The proposed association described here between PTSD-induced immunosuppression and increased risk of death from COVID-19 needs to be explored further, and in addition, high PTSD rates in black people needs to be recognized and treated as both a mental and physical health priority. And this is serious stuff. This is real serious, and I'm going to make sure that I post this article, and that I want to make sure I add this link so you can go read. You can read the article for yourself. You can read it for yourself. I must do that. So, right, again, black people, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and the risk of death from coronavirus. They both work hand in hand.